It's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Claire Babineaux-Fontenot, the former CEO of Feeding America. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks, food pantries, and local meal programs. Their common goal is simple: help people get the food and resources they need to thrive. Retiring only a few weeks ago, Claire served as the CEO of Feeding America since 2018. During her tenure, the organization expanded its reach, galvanized national attention on food insecurity and the systemic issues that drive it, and deepened its commitment to center the people experiencing hunger and to seek guidance from their expertise. Key accomplishments during her service included providing 6 billion meals during the height of the pandemic, unifying the Feeding America network under a transformative contract, and developing the first of its kind strategic framework for a national federated network which included input from all aspects of food banking, including, importantly, those facing hunger. Under Claire's leadership, Feeding America more than doubled its food distribution and mobilized new resources to serve tens of millions of people facing hunger in every community in the country. Claire holds a Bachelor of Science from the University of Louisiana in Lafayette, a Juris Doctor from Southern University Law Center in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and a Master of Laws in Taxation from Southern Methodist University Dedman School of Law in Dallas, Texas. Claire was named one of Time's 100 most influential people of 2020. In 2021, she was honored with PR Week's Communicator of the Year Award and Southern Methodist University's Distinguished Alumni Award. Claire was among Forbes 50 over 50 in 2022. And in 2023, the American Association of State Colleges and Universities honored Claire with a Distinguished Alumnus Award. She's been a lifelong volunteer, serving on a number of nonprofit boards, including the court-appointed Special Advocates for Children, the Board of Directors and Audit Committee for the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, and the Board of Trustees and Finance and Audit Committee for the National Urban League and the National Association of Black Accountants. She also served on the corporate advisory board for the Association of Latino Professionals for America and the Global Board of Directors and the Walmart Foundation Executive Committee. In August of 2025, Feeding America announced Claire's plan to transition out of her role as CEO as she prepared for retirement. So what an exciting time to hear from her. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming today's special guest moderator, Fred Glass, and our featured speaker, Claire Babineaux-Fontenot. Thank you, Claire, again for joining us.
All right. Claire, welcome back to Indianapolis, and thank you for taking the time to come visit with us. We're very grateful for that, and thank you also for your tremendous leadership of Feeding America and helping to feed the hungry throughout our country. You are the most impactful leader with whom it's been my pleasure to work or really even see. So I'm so excited that you're here, and we're eager to hear your story and perspective. So I'm going to get out of the way and ask you to take over, and maybe at the end we'll come back with a few follow-up questions.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me back. Thank you, Fred, for everything that you are and the way that you give everything that you are to the work that you do as a part of the remarkable network that we're both privileged to serve in. When I thought about this occasion, some thoughts came to mind, and I don't know how many of you know Fred well, but one of the things that I've come to count on you for, Fred, is honesty. So there are 3 topics I thought I'd talk about, and Fred, I need you to keep me honest on making those 3 things make sense today. Got it? Okay, so the first one is horses. Okay. The second is bad math.
I'm good.
Okay. In fact, I'm going to have you to do some math actually on that one. And then the third one is stars. Okay, so on the surface, based upon this crowd, they're apparently honest too. They chuckle at the notion that that has anything to do with why you invited me to be here today. I hope it will make sense, and you'll be the arbiter, right? So you'll give me a thumbs up if it does. Now, something I heard referenced before, I'll tell you when I've been here in May before, what I've heard people around here say is, after all, this is the month of May. So one would think that with me knowing that this is the month of May, that I wouldn't come here and start out by talking about horses. You might think she thinks she's in Kentucky because I think there's a little race that's about to happen. No, I know where I am. I want to talk about horses in two ways. I want to talk about wild horses, and I want to talk about dark horses. So let's start with wild horses. Have you ever heard of the expression wild horses couldn't drag me away? Well, wild horses couldn't keep me away today. Let me unpack that for you for just a moment. What is my custom is when I have an opportunity like this one, people will ask me to do a keynote. And I usually will stand up and roam around on the stage, every corner, moving all around. Well, due to a recent accident, that's not going to be the way that I am able to show up for you today, but I'm going to try my best to show up nonetheless. So I'll do it from this chair. But that couldn't keep me away. No. So why? Why would I need to be here right now with you? Because I know who you are. I felt who you are. This isn't my first time in Indiana. It's not my first time in Indianapolis. Some of the most powerful partnerships that we have in our whole network are right here. You know, I'm looking at you over there at that president's table, looking at you, Corteva, Lilly Endowment, JD Finish Line, Elevance. Well, when I came here to Indiana the first times when I was Feeding America CEO, it was actually during the pandemic. And I wasn't in Indianapolis first. I was actually over closer to Chicago in Gary at the time. Now they're in Maryville at the food bank there. And I just witnessed such remarkable generosity. I think maybe it's important for us as humans to be able to put aside some of the hard memories that we have of the pandemic so that we can keep moving forward. But I have to tell you, I don't forget that the people that I saw throughout this state and throughout this nation who were showing up for their neighbors in the middle of a global health pandemic were doing so not understanding precisely what the risks were to themselves and their safety. We knew there were some. We knew some of them were huge. At the time that I came here, on the TV, what you could count on every day is they actually used to keep a count of how many people succumbed to COVID. Do you remember that? And this state stood up nonetheless, and maybe even because of it, not just in spite of it. How could I say no? My God. Of course I had to come back. So I had to come back at least to have one more time. My tenure at Feeding America ends on July 1st, though the transition to a new CEO was effective on April 14th. But before I leave Feeding America, I wanted to come back one last time and say thank you to Indiana and thank you to Indianapolis. Wild horses. Another kind of horse I mentioned was a dark one. I'm a dark horse. Have you heard the expression before? You know, the kind that you probably shouldn't put your money on, right? Let me talk about what God's providence did to this dark horse, though. Through God's providence, I was born in this country, celebrating its 250th year. When I decided what I'd wear today, did you get it? Red, white, and blue. I sincerely do not believe that I am possible anywhere else. I don't believe my story happens other than here. And what I know for certain is that in spite of the odds, my story did happen here in this great nation. God's providence made me a part of a unique family, a big one. Some of you know how big, so I'll bring you all in on it. I'm one of 108 children. Through biology, adoption, and fostering, who had, through divine intervention, the privilege to be the kids of Mary Alice and Warren Babineaux. People without a lot of financial means, children of sharecroppers, both of them. Brilliant people who didn't graduate high school, but who had so much capacity for love and care and so much intellect that they made ways out of no way. And they made investments in me and my siblings that resulted in me doing the stuff that were read, the things that were read. There's a good bit of education past high school talked about there. It was possible because of my parents, and it was possible because of this country. I'm a dark horse who wins every day. And I'm so proud that I get to be a part of all of this and be here with you. Do horses make sense now? Thank you. Now, I want to talk about some bad math now, though. So, I always was good at math. Say I have a head for math and a heart for people. And this nation is engaged in some really bad math right now. The math associated with food insecurity, it really makes no sense. So, conservative estimates are that food insecurity cost us, in addition to what we pay in SNAP and those kinds of things, that it costs us over $130 billion a year. And I know those numbers are conservative. Because the ripple effect of people not having consistent, predictable access to nutritious food is so vast, we'll never be able to count it. And the implications for this nation, when we get this right, are so vast, we'll never be able to count it. But I want to do a little bad math exercise for you in particular. I'm going to get your help with this. Did you say you love math? Is that what you said?
No, I didn't go to Purdue, Claire. So I'm a political science guy from IU, and so math is not my forte. But if you come for bad math, I may be your guy. You might be my guy.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. All right, so I want you to do this math. I think we're going to be okay, Brad. Here we go. All right. So, in the state of Indiana, here's how the math works. Okay, so 43 plus 2 equals what?
45.
Oh, good job. Give him applause. Well done, Fred. Well done. What is 45 minus 7.5?
37.5.
Correct answer and a demonstration of Indiana bad math. In the state of Indiana, a family of 4 making approximately $43,000 a year receives significant child care subsidies so that they can go to work. If that same family, anyone in that family that makes up the $43,000, if they get an extra $2,000 a year, which gets them to $45,000 a year, you know what happens to their child care subsidies? It goes to 0. Before the $2,000 raise, which is the 43 plus 2 equals 45, they would have had subsidies for the vast majority of the $12,000 it costs per year in the great state of Indiana for your children to get child care. So with the addition of $2,000, they lose $7,500. And therefore, we have a system that tells that family, you cannot afford a raise. Doesn't that sound like bad math? It is. That's both the good and the bad part of this story. Bad is the obvious. The good is we could do something about that. Here's what it's going to take. It's going to take us remembering COVID. Us remembering that as shrill as we can be, you know, one of the things we consistently agreed on in COVID, that people ought to have enough to eat. You know where we had the most bipartisan consensus during COVID? Around making sure people had enough to eat. You know what happened to food insecurity rates during COVID? What do you think? Your intuition might have told you that they went up. Your intuition would be wrong. They went down. We saw them differently because the lines went outside of buildings. And we did something about it. And that's who this country is at its best. It's a company that sees a problem and decides to do something about it. And when we do best is when we do it together. And the really good news about hunger is that when we do it together, every single body wins. So you're sitting there with your own passions, right? You got the things that you care the most about. I will guarantee you whatever it is, doing something about hunger makes that better. Guarantee. Let's say it is medicine. Well, conservative estimates is food insecurity rates cost us an additional $50 billion every year in medical cost. We did something about food insecurity, we do something about health in this country. We did more about it. Education, compelling data show. When a brain does not get what it needs early, there is often irreversible damage done to that child. When a person who's thinking about a job doesn't have to worry about whether or not they're going to get to eat on the day of the interview or before they get their next check or their first check, they'll do better at that job. So you decide for yourselves in your hearts, what is it that you care the most about? And whatever that is, I encourage you to also care about and be about solving for hunger, because I guarantee you, you'll be solving for whatever you care about. So that was bad math. We okay there? And here's my final area that I'd like to discuss. Stars. So I want to talk about stars also in two ways. One of them relates to stars above. Now, I talked about 250 earlier. I'm thinking about 250,000 when it comes to these stars. Anybody have a hint about what I'm thinking? Do you know how far away from Earth Artemis 2 got? The farthest part that they got from us? About 250,000 miles. And then they came back. It must have seemed absurd, though, when the first person looked at the stars and said, you know what, I think we ought to go there. And then someone saw this circle thing, said, we're going to call that one the moon. I think we should go to the moon. We have been there and back more than once. A people, a nation, a world that can go to the moon, can solve for hunger. It makes me hopeful, those stars. I watched Apollo 13. Probably the most famous quote, or among the most famous quotes from Apollo 13, would have been the quote around someone was talking about, well, what would happen if you failed? And the famous quote was, well, failure was not an option. I actually heard one of the astronauts from Artemis 2 this very morning on CBS. And I heard the person reference that quote. They said, I think sometimes people don't understand what that quote really meant. Number one, the astronaut it's attributed to didn't actually say it quite that way. But it didn't mean to suggest that in an effort worth doing, that there will not be setbacks or failures. It's that when it's worth doing, you don't stop until you succeed. That's what failure is not an option means. Failure is a bump. It's not an end. It's the thing you get past next until you get to where you need to go. And then finally, the last star. This one. People in the Feeding America Network know that whenever I give a presentation inside of the Feeding America Network, I always wear a pin. I always choose a pin for the occasion. I did that today in a really important, profound way. I am in a community that is part of the Feeding America Network, so it felt fitting. And I chose this one. You recognize the kind of star this is? A starfish. There's actually one of our profoundly impactful, transformative investors/donors out of San Diego, a lady who's become a dear friend of mine. Her name's Gwendolyn. She was being honored. She actually saved that food bank in San Diego. It was about to literally shutter, but for Gwendolyn. And they were celebrating her one day, and someone told me that one of her favorite stories was the story of the starfish. And I wasn't able to be in the audience as they celebrated her. We actually building that house that I mentioned. I don't know if I mentioned, we were building a house in South Carolina. I think I was talking to somebody about that earlier today. So I went onto the beach and I found a starfish. And I made a little video about starfish for her that was played at that event. And I'll never forget what that story meant to me, so I'll share it with you to the extent you haven't heard it before. The story goes that after a big storm, an elderly man was walking along a beach. And in the distance, he could see a small figure doing something. Looks like he was throwing something into the water. And he just didn't know what's he doing. So he got closer and closer, and he realized it was a little boy. As he walked up to the little boy, he could see he was throwing back starfish. And he went up to the little boy to give him some words of wisdom. And he said, "Son, what are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm throwing back these starfish that came to shore because of the storm. They can't survive out here." And the elderly man said, "But son, there's so many of them. You can't possibly save all of them." So the little boy looked at the man, smiled, and picked up another starfish and threw it back into the water. The old man said, "But it's not going to matter, son." And the little boy says, "It mattered to that one. I'm a starfish. The investments made by my parents, by this country, they matter to me. All around you are people in your community who deserve to matter to you. I think they do. I've witnessed things that you've done that tell me that they do. In order to actually make a meaningful impact on them each, on us all, we're going to have to put aside some of the stuff that really shouldn't matter that much. We're going to have to put aside pride. We're going to have to decide that there are things that matter more than politics, things that matter more than tribe. We refer to people experiencing hunger in the Feeding America Network as neighbors. There's a reason we choose that. It's to remind us all we each get a chance to be one. My hope, my prayer, is that you will continue to model what it means to be a neighbor. So as I said before, wild horses.
Excellent. Thank you. We have some time for some questions, and I again encourage you to use the cards on your table to write them down. If you have some, we'd like to talk about what you'd like to talk about, and our crack volunteer team will ferry them up here, and we'll ask some. But in the meantime, Claire, I'd like to ask you this. Talked a lot about hunger. We're all about feeding the hungry and all that, and learned so much from you about that. But also, I believe your transformation of Feeding America as an organization from when you started in 2018 to now, from an organization that was widely viewed as dysfunctional. My predecessor here, I think he would testify that I think food bankers felt like the organization was culturally in bad shape. Now you leave it as one of the premier not-for-profits in the country. We're a bunch of leaders looking for leader tidbits. Can you share with us some of the keystones of how you went through that journey?
Yeah. You know, I think, thank you for that. And I was just having a conversation with Chuck from Lillian, formerly, I suppose, but always. And we're talking about how it can be difficult to talk about contributions that we make out of a fear that somehow it feels self-centered or self-aggrandizing. Working in this has helped me to see it a little bit differently than that. The idea that I have made a contribution to such honorable work will sustain me for the rest of my life. So it's gratifying to know that I got to be a part of the change that's helping us to be even better. So the organization that I joined already had really, really, really hardworking, dedicated, principled people in it. It was already doing groundbreaking things. The national organization had all of those attributes that I mentioned as well. But one of the key things that felt hidden, it felt like we didn't always know for whom we were working. And I don't know how you're going to get a job done well if you don't define who the arbiter of your success is. So at Feeding America, I'd have people at the national organization explain to me, well, you know, we work for food banks. And I go, oh, we work for food banks? Had to move that one around in my head a bit. I'd go to agency conferences so if you understand, so there are food banks. Every food bank has a warehouse, right? Food banks also have other things that they do as well. And if you're Gleaners, there are lots of other things that you do. And every food bank also has partners who help them in distribution of food. Some of those partners are big, mid-sized. Some of them are itty-bitty little teeny basement pantries at churches, for instance. Agency conferences usually are the conferences where a food bank brings together their partners who help them. So I was at an agency conference. So going to those agency conferences. And I'd hear people at the agency conferences telling me that those food banks work for them. And I go, you know, I don't think the food bank realizes they work for me. And again, I had to run that around my head a few times. I'm like, really? So the food banks work for the pantries. And the national organization works for the food banks. Could I satisfy my arbiter and not make progress on food insecurity? Maybe. So if I had a different arbiter, if I worked for someone other than the food bank, or if the food bank worked for someone other than their agency partners, what arbiter then would actually be the best one? The people most impacted by our work. People experiencing hunger. I believe that the most important thing that I could do, and where I applied a considerable amount of my efforts, was in helping to make sure we all understood for whom we worked. We as a collective work for people experiencing hunger, period. You have different roles to play. Some of us get to touch them in one way, others in a different, but we all work for them. With that crystallized, it actually paved the way for so many other beautiful things that have happened in the network. When there have been debates over, well, is that yours or mine? The answer is usually it's not for either of you. It's actually for the community, and what would the community say? You got a question about it, go ask them. They've got answers. So that was really, really, really powerful. I think I also had an opportunity to remind us of who we are at our best. Assume good intentions. I had chances when people would come and criticize members of the network. And I remember having a conversation with one, and I'm going to try to be a little bit briefer, bring this one to a close so you could ask another question. But I remember having a conversation. I was in a particular, I won't even say where. I was in a particular state. It was not Indiana. I was riding along with a food banker in a car. The food banker then starts saying very nasty things about another food banker. And I stopped the person. I said, oh my gosh, hold on a second. Do you realize you're talking about a Feeding America network partner? Maybe you're not understanding. You are actually, do you have evidence of what you're saying, or is this what you think? So, well, I know in my heart. Okay, well, okay, good. Well, I'm not going to be able to monitor your heart, so can you give me some quantifiables on this thing? And I was visibly revolting against that person saying nasty things without corroboration about a member of the network. And the person was clearly taken aback. They expected me to be able to take on things, negative things they were going to say about one of our partners, not challenge it in any way, not expect anything different. When it was over and the person stopped, I said, I want you to understand, you can trust me to do that for you. But don't ever expect me to do it for you. If you would ever again try to do that to someone else to whom I have the same fidelity, I am a place you can come to contemplate what's possible when we work better together. I am not a place you should ever come to trash another member of this organization. That was an important thing. So I'll leave it there.
No, that's awesome. I love the clarity. Quick follow-up, because I love this so much. You've shared at other venues the list that your transition team gave you, maybe your first day in the office. Could you talk about that and the lesson learned from that?
Yes, and maybe it'll solve for some of the questions that are out there, because I want to make sure. Rapid is not my forte. I don't know if you've noticed. We're in one question I've answered so far. Okay, here we go. As it relates to that, though, this is really another very important thing. Thank you for asking it, Fred. I had been in the for-profit world most of my career. I'd worked in government service before, but other than that, I worked in private practice as a lawyer. I worked at a Big Four accounting firm, and I worked at Walmart. So I had this concept of competition that was fixed. So I get into my job, and within the first week, all the team is coming around, and they're explaining to me what they do. And they're trying to help me to be better equipped to do my job, which I was grateful for. One team had this beautiful glossy placemat thing that they put in front of me. And on the far right side of the placemat was the word competitors. And on the list were other organizations where all of its members wake up in the morning, focus on how to be helpful to people experiencing hunger and people experiencing poverty in this country. And at first I thought, maybe it's a typo. Competitors? I could name some organizations you know well that were on that list. I said, when you say competitor, what do you mean? And then they gave me a definition. And after they gave me the definition, I said, well, no, but when you say competitor, what do you mean? And then they gave me another definition. I think they thought, this new CEO is kind of obtuse. I don't think she understands what competitor means. It wasn't until I said it the third time, I think it finally sunk in, that I refused to accept those definitions for those people on that list. I did not understand that there was competition among nonprofits. I thought that was only a for-profit thing. I didn't understand how could it possibly be. I think I understand it a little bit better now, and it's still not acceptable. I think inside of an environment of scarcity and a mentality of scarcity, when you're working so hard trying to do good, and when society and sometimes donors convince you that there's only one pie and it has a fixed size and only one sliver will be given out, so you've got to fight for the crumbs. You fight each other for crumbs. What I hope we have done better than we ever have before as a national organization, and what I hope all of you who are donors will expect more and more of organizations like Feeding America and any other nonprofit, is the recognition that you come to the table with flour and eggs and butter and milk. You can make a new pie. You can make a new pie. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. You guys, these questions are awesome, and I wish I had time to ask them all.
And the
because
5-minute thing comes right as we're getting started. Let me see. Let's see what we can do.
But they really reflect, I think, a deep understanding of the challenges. So I apologize. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them. But I'm going to ask this one. This is a great question. Claire, have you? How are you transitioning from Feeding America to your next? Have you planned your next, or are you taking time to reflect and pivot over time? What is the impact you still want to make?
So I'm going to try to be quick. So what I have decided to do is the thing that that's not easy at all for me, is this notion of peace, be still. From July 1st, now this might not sound like a long time for other people, but if you knew me, it's a long time. From July 1st to the beginning of September, and yes, that represents 1 quarter, and yes, I was a finance professional, I'm going to wait. I'm not going to make any meaningful decisions about what I do next until September. I'm going to take the time in between to think about what I truly believe will be an opportunity for me to serve. I know I will not abandon this mission until the work's over. So I'm going to find another way. I think maybe you know, I said I've been promoted to volunteer, so I'm planning to volunteer in the Feeding America network, and I will do more, because to breathe is to do for me. I just don't know what yet. Time will tell.
Excellent. Well, as we've talked, I encourage you to take your time on that. There's a great tradition at the Economic Club about finishing on time. We promise to have folks out at 1:30, and I've been told in no uncertain terms that I need to be done by 1:20, so I'm like kind of skating on the edge. I know what the last question is. I've seen you enough to know what the last question is. Claire, what gives you hope?
So if I ever struggle with being hopeful, the thing that I like to do, you've heard me talk about it before, one of my favorite things to do, go to a park where kids are playing. I like to close my eyes. Can you imagine it? And I like to listen. And consistently, you know what I hear? I hear new people coming onto the playground and other people embracing them. I can tell that some of the people don't look like the other people. Not because I'm looking with my eyes, but I'm sensing. I hear people laughing on playgrounds. There's a way a kid laughs that seems to be different than the way adults laugh. Those deep belly laughs. I hear hope on playgrounds. I'm both inspired by the fact that I feel we as adults owe it to children to do everything in our power to ensure that what they inherit from us is better, period. And I love the way they don't judge who gets to play. And I love the way they choose to play. So, I also am hopeful because, did I mention this isn't my first time in Indiana? I've seen you people. Maybe I'm the only person who says you people and it's always a compliment, but it's always a compliment. I've witnessed what you can do. You're doing it now. The future requires that you keep on doing it. And that especially when you're doing it, do the kind thing out loud and make sure there are cameras. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you for coming back to Indianapolis. Thank you for the attention of the audience. Thank you for all you've done to help people facing hunger.